Hi, and welcome to Home Tech. Jason, how's it going?
It's going great, Seth. How are you?
Good. I'm in studio. Well, I can't even tell you. I'm at this point, I'm just traveling. I'm traveling around town, setting up shop in random people's houses.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. I think we've had Studio A and B and C, and now we're on to D. I can't even keep track anymore.
Yeah. I'm in a room now, just kind of a spare bedroom, and that one a house. The house that we're staying in, some of our family let us stay with them, so we could we have a place to stay while we're waiting to purchase our house. And if all goes well, sometime next month I'll have another house this time to remodel. But in the meantime, in the interim, I have no place to record. And this one's nice. It's just except every place I go, there's some kind of odd, like, sounding fan or air conditioning noise. Like,
right.
I don't know what that is. Like, why
seems to follow you around, huh?
Yeah, why can't they be quiet? Just be quiet.
Well, yeah, it's been a little crazy for you. I know we should explain for anyone who may not be aware, but Seth is kind of in flux, right, in a state of flux right now because he's between homes, and so you're kind of sounds like sealing the deal on a place, which is great. You're going to be doing some remodeling, so you'll have to keep us posted on some of the technology decisions that you make as you're kind of getting into this new home and initiating the project. And I'll be curious to kind of follow along with that process. And I think our audience might enjoy some insights on that. So you'll have to make sure that you share kind of your thought process and some of your own trials and tribulations as you kind of work through the remodel.
No, I definitely will. I've got the house that we're buying. If all goes well and we buy, it looks like we're going to pretty much have to gut it and remodel and repaint and pretty much touch every surface in the house. So should be fun. Should be a project.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, excited to get into the show. We should get started here. We've got a lot to cover. Had a great interview on today's show with Ted Schremp from Smarthome Ventures, and we won't touch too much on that here in the intro because obviously just stay tuned for the interview portion and you'll hear all about it. But definitely an intriguing product, and sounds like they've got a good approach and a solid company behind them. So I look forward to sharing that conversation with our audience.
Definitely. Well, in the news this week, an interesting company came up as well. A little company called Apple.
That's right.
Yeah. It sounds like they've updated the Apple TV and in one of the beta releases to be HomeKit capable.
Yep, that does appear to be the case, and it's the kind of normal Apple speculation, rumor mill type of thing going on here. But this appears to be pretty much a substantiated thing. This isn't just people speculating. This latest kind of round of news basically has to do with the potential for the Apple TV to kind of become the hub of a HomeKit run smart home, which is something that we've speculated on the show before. What kind of makes this story different is that this is actually based on notes that Apple themselves released, I guess, in conjunction with one of the beta versions of the Apple TV software. And the notes kind of state that it includes support for HomeKit.
Pretty cool. I mean, everyone knows that the Apple TV these days runs on iOS, or a stripped-down version of iOS, which developers have been wanting to develop on for years now. But it also, I mean, Apple puts a ton of frameworks for developers, both themselves and external developers, on these devices and in the software. And HomeKit's just a framework, so it kind of made sense to me that HomeKit's going to be on the Apple TV, or they just include it in one of the framework builds, and you're good to go. But this one is interesting because whoever was toying around with it and digging deeper into it, found out that when you enable or you sign in with your iCloud account through the Apple TV, it enables basically remote access into the house. And that's one of the things that at WWDC they were talking about HomeKit having remote access, you get it kind of built in with remote access. If you have a device, like if you're a manufacturer and you have a device that's HomeKit capable, you get remote access for free. And I think we kind of talked on this a little bit, and we said, I wonder how they're going to do that. But it looks like, this could be one of the many ways they could do that, where you have an Apple TV in the house, and that sits on one side of your router, and the Apple servers sit on the other side, and you're out and about, wherever you are. Your phone will connect to Apple servers. Apple servers will connect down securely to the Apple TV. One would hope, and then out to your device to turn on and off a light. So that's basically how that remote access would work. Just kind of an interesting and sneaky way to do it, I think, huh?
Yeah, no, it's like I said, it's kind of just publicly acknowledged stuff that you can see that's happening. It's not like a, I don't know, revolutionary story or anything, but it's like, this isn't that much of a surprise, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like it makes just too much sense that the Apple TV will, in one form or another, tie into HomeKit. Like you said, I mean, it's Apple TV runs on basically a version of iOS, and HomeKit's obviously going to be built into iOS. So you're obviously going to see some connections there. I think the question still remains what exact shape it's going to take. Like you said, this latest story really has to do with remote access. So you log into iCloud. That basically enables the Apple TV to become what they're calling a remote access peer. And then it'll sync information basically up to Apple servers about, various HomeKit components that you have in your house. And that's kind of using it as a way, like you said, to enable remote access. So control of your home when you're away. And it makes sense. So I was definitely intrigued by the story, and obviously something we're going to keep a close eye on. They've got an event, Apple does, scheduled coming right up here, October 16th. That's a Thursday. And again, we're keeping our fingers crossed that we'll see some new hardware. Although, some of the stories I'm seeing indicate that we may not see a new Apple TV until 2015. And this upcoming event, they're talking more about maybe iPads, a new iMac possibly, and I think you and I are both keeping our fingers crossed for a new Mac Mini as well.
Mac Mini, oh my gosh, yes. Please,
yeah.
Please.
So always exciting when Apple has an event. It's definitely always it's always fun to watch and see what they're going to do, and I look forward to that event.
Well, you can also look forward to going to Best Buy and buying probably some HomeKit connected devices, because it looks like they're rolling out some interesting connected home displays, I guess is what they're calling them.
Yeah, and this is something that been hearing murmurings about, and kind of had an inkling that it was going to happen. But yeah, the story is out there now. It looks like 400 stores by Thanksgiving is what they're targeting. And like you said, the connected home display is what they're going to call it. And it's just what it sounds. In-store display at Best Buy. It looks like it's going to contain products like Nest, Honeywell thermostats, quick set locks, smart locks, some cameras. It is, of course, going to have the Peq Home Automation Hub, which is our guest on the show today, Ted Schremp, Smarthome Ventures. That's their product. Philips Hue, Logitech Harmony Remote. So they've got quite a few vendors set up. It seems like a perfect fit for Best Buy. I mean, with the way smart home technology is headed, and more people are becoming aware of it. For Best Buy to kind of hop on that, I'm actually kind of surprised that it didn't happen sooner.
Yeah. I mean, I think they've tried to some extent. I remember walking in once and seeing a bunch of Insteon type equipment at my local Best Buy. I guess their Magnolia stores have been selling Control 4 and URC remotes. Although those are dealer type things. I think Magnolia is more set up like a dealer, right? It's not.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, it's not uncommon for Best Buy to want to be in this space. So it's just it's interesting to see them have this kind of push and this kind of presence in their stores. And 400 stores, that's going to be pretty big for these companies that are going to be selling in there. Because I mean, people do Thanksgiving shopping, man. They buy anything.
That's true, yeah, and obviously, the timing is not a coincidence. They're wanting to get this kind of rolled out as a little test for, well, I shouldn't say a little, but a test for the holiday season and the holiday shopping season to, see if they can drum up some sales. And I wouldn't be surprised if this works out well for them. Like I said, if anything, I'm surprised it took them this long to kind of make this sort of a concentrated initiative. But again, I think the smart home is just too big of a market for the big players to ignore any longer. And I think, like you said, Magnolia is a different animal. They're set up more for like the custom install channel, and Control 4 is very much still a part of that. And this is more like stuff you can just kind of buy, unbox when you get home, and set it up yourself.
Sounds fun.
Yeah.
Well,
definitely.
Speaking of fun, I think you ran across a fun-looking home automation device.
Yeah, this one was like just interesting on a number of different angles, and I thought we would talk about it for that reason. It's another home automation hub.
You're welcome.
And they're becoming a dime a dozen, and people are putting out home automation hubs like that's just the thing that people are doing now. And this one has a couple of interesting things about it. It's called the Rico Home Automation Hub, and the thing that caught my eye about it and caught my attention about it is that it actually leverages your old smartphone. And we've all nowadays pretty much got one or two of them. I know I've got a couple of them sitting around, older iPhones that just are collecting dust. I'm not really sure what to do with them. You don't want to just throw them away, but they're not worth anything really on the open market. So they just kind of get thrown in a drawer and they sit there, and that's that, right? This Rico Home Automation Hub, what you actually do is you take your old smartphone and you essentially hook it up to this hub, and it leverages the processing power and some of the sensors inside of your smartphone to kind of turn it into a home automation hub, which I thought was very interesting.
Yeah, I love this idea. It's not really recycling, which is one thing you could do with your smartphone, but it's definitely reusing. And you get kind of a couple of features right out of the box with this little guy: motion, smoke, temp. Some of their they have some smart sockets that they're trying to sell. You can do smart lock controls, and I think it has a CO detector on it as well. Mm-hmm. And then you add the phone in, and you get HD camera, the microphone, the speaker, 3G and Wi-Fi connectivity, and the more, like you said, the more advanced processor that's built in. So they could actually build this device a lot cheaper just with those couple sensors that are built in. And then when you add the phone in, you get this beefed up version of it with Wi-Fi and everything, and they don't have to spend the R&D money developing all that stuff that's built into the phone. That's a really smart idea, but also, I mean, you get a use for one of these devices. It's a good reuse for one of these devices you just have laying around. So I really love stuff that takes advantage of technology. I think you and I were just talking about the last episode, like how much of the technology that we kind of just get rid of, right? I mean, we pull technology and equipment out of people's houses. I was in where I was recording. I was sitting there staring at a ton of like old Panja and a ton of this stuff, and like I can't do anything with it. But this is a really cool idea.
Yeah, it is. It's clever, and like you said, you don't necessarily have to have an old smartphone. Like you can just buy this thing, and on its own, it'll do a number of functions. But you put that old smartphone into there, and you get some extra functionality. It's definitely an interesting piece of industrial design. We'll post a picture of it up in the show notes. It looks like a little cartoonish type of character. So it's not like your typical home automation hub that just kind of looks like a little black box or whatever. They've made a decision to kind of give it character and humanize it almost a little bit, which I thought was interesting. I don't know if it's for everyone, but different nonetheless. And we should mention that this is actually on Indiegogo right now. So I don't know, it might be kind of early in the process for them. I'm actually not sure exactly where they are or what they're, seeking the money for, kind of where they're at in the product development process. But definitely a clever approach and, something different. And I'm just curious to see where this product goes and if they're going to be able to make a run at it.
Yep. I wish them the best of luck because I really like the idea. It seems like just too smart of an idea to pass up on. If you can leverage existing junk that you have at your house and make a new product out of it, that's the kind of stuff I love.
Yep, most definitely. All right, well, let's go ahead and jump into the interview with Ted Schremp from Smarthome Ventures. Before we do that, again, just want to send a quick thanks to everybody for listening. Really appreciate you guys tuning in. And as always, feel free to stop by the website, HomeTech.fm, leave us some feedback. If you're enjoying the show, tell a friend. Also, rate it on iTunes. We'd really appreciate that. And, of course, connect with us on your normal social media channels on Facebook or Twitter at HomeTech Podcast. So with that, we will jump into our interview with Ted Schremp, CEO of Smarthome Ventures, the company behind Peq Home Automation. Hey, Ted, welcome to HomeTech.fm. Thanks so much for taking the time to join us.
Good afternoon. Great to be here.
All right. Well, we're happy to have you on. Excited to talk about what you guys have going on. Obviously, we're going to jump into Smarthome Ventures and of course, going to talk about the Peq Home Automation Hub. But before we jump into that, why don't you give our audience a little bit of an introduction to yourself and maybe some of your background that kind of led you up to this point in the home automation business?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been with Smarthome Ventures for just about 3 months now, joined in July. Came most recently from the cable industry. Actually was running the largest cable operator in Indonesia. So spent about 18 months there, just took that company public in early June and came back to U.S. soil. It's interesting because, everybody wants broadband everywhere on the planet. So it was an interesting opportunity to bring broadband to a developing market. Prior to that, I was Chief Marketing Officer and EVP of Marketing and Operations at Charter Communications, so the third or fourth largest cable operator in the U.S. So been a long-time telecom guy, both cable and other forms of telecom. What really excites me about what we're up to at Smarthome Ventures, I mean, you think about, where the marketplace is at this point. I mean, broadband's pretty widely deployed, 70, 75%. Of course, mobile's, really to the point of full adoption at this point for the most part. But where the sort of excitement and growth and action is in the sorts of things that leverage that IP connectivity. And so it's pretty exciting to be part of that in the connected home space in particular. So happy to be part of the team here at Smarthome Ventures.
Yeah, that's great. Speaking of the team at Smarthome Ventures, why don't you tell us a little about what Smarthome Ventures is, and kind of just a brief background of the company, and maybe touch on the team, and then just kind of from a high level what Smarthome Ventures is all about and what you guys are trying to accomplish.
Yeah, so the company came together about 18 months ago. The folks that founded the company and ultimately consist of the senior team really come from service provider backgrounds. Some folks from the wireless business, Sprint specifically, retail. Actually, have a guy on our team that spent some time at Best Buy, and then Comcast as well. So the common theme across all of the folks that brought the company together is that they had experience, particularly in the wireless space, but even for me in the voice over IP space, experience taking sort of just complex products and making them work successfully at retail. So for wireless, it's almost hard to imagine it now because you can walk into a Walgreens or a CVS and there's probably 5 prepaid phones being sold there. Yeah. But if you go back to the earlier days, 2005, 2006, there's no such thing as sort of a multi-branded environment for mobility, and so that's very much changed. And so when we looked at the sort of premise of the company, really is that the smart home or connected home market is really ripe for mass market adoption, but that what's missing is category discovery, right? So it's a complex product in some respects, or has been historically. It's a fragmented market. And so the notion, behind the formation of Smarthome Ventures was that, by really making the platform as intuitive, as easy to use as possible, and making it available at retail, that we could drive adoption of the connected home category into the mass market. And that's exactly what we've been doing.
Very cool, very cool. 18 months, that seems like an incredibly fast amount of time, right? Just from a start to finish product launch. At least that's what I think of when I heard you said that. I was like, holy cow, how in the world did that happen?
Yeah, well, we've been heads down and busy, that's for sure. We actually didn't even launch the company into public view until mid-August, and then Peq, which is our flagship product, launched about a week after that. So we've really only been out there in market in public view for, I guess, just right around 2 months now. So we've been heads down and focused on building a great product, gaining strong distribution to help take it to the common consumer, the typical consumer, and excited to be where we are as quickly as we have been.
So you just mentioned Peq there. I guess that piqued my interest. Pun intended. So I guess that is your flagship product. What exactly is Peq? I guess we should probably go down that, because Smarthome Ventures is the company that makes Peq. Is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So Peq is our retail brand, PEQ, and our website is mypeq.com if anybody wants to sort of check out the product in more detail. But it's available today at Best Buy. We've launched in Crutchfield as well. We actually are on Home Shopping Network the other night, and certainly over the next couple of weeks and months, you'll see some additional announcements about distribution. But Peq is really built on 4 key ideas. It's to make it easy for the consumer to discover the category, right? So that's making it available at bricks and mortar retail. Today there's 1 or 2% adoption of connected home technologies. In order to drive that to 25 or 30%, people need to get their hands on it, see it, feel it, touch it, understand what it does for them. The second principle is that we just need to make it as simple as possible to install, right? So, the average consumer, with no technical knowledge, just a smartphone and broadband, can install our system in about 30 minutes. The third component, of course, is ease of use. So, we've developed, what we think is a terrific set of user interfaces across Android, iPhone, iPad, and web that just, it's more than just sort of a remote control, right? It's, powerful rules creation, a set of cloud services for video storage, all those sorts of things. And of course, put in a wrapper that's just incredibly intuitive. And then we back all that up with 7-day-a-week live customer support. So we really see ourselves as a service provider for connected home technology as much or more as we see ourselves as a device provider, right? We're really about, taking this broad ecosystem of devices that are, certified on our platform today, and even third-party devices as we go forward, and just integrating them and making them work for that average consumer. But in the event that something goes wrong, we think having a live human on the other end of the phone to support it is an important part of the overall value proposition.
Yeah, absolutely. And Seth and I both come from the background of more traditional, professionally installed home automation systems, and ongoing service and maintenance is a huge part of what we do. And so I'm glad to hear that you guys are really taking support seriously. I know when you were talking there, you used the word service provider model. Are you guys looking into that sort of a model and maybe working with internet service providers to kind of get this product into people's homes? Or are you just looking at basically a straight to retail, straight to consumer kind of model with partnerships like Best Buy and the Crutchfield deal that you just mentioned? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, it's really frankly a dual path model, right? So Peq is our retail brand, and as we have conversations with partners, we've also had discussions around white label brands, right? Enabling their service that they would take to market. And coming from the cable industry myself, everybody's always looking for that next product to sell. And for a lot of the cable operators, that has in fact been connected home. And so yes, absolutely, that's a place that we've got ongoing dialogue with various folks. But frankly, in the early stage, a lot of folks have just opted into the Peq brand because it's a nascent market, and folks are trying to put some toes in the water and see what works. So frankly, that's really why Peq is the retail brand, Smarthome Ventures is the company, because we've got other ambitions above and beyond just the retail product.
I see. Yeah, that makes sense. So speaking of kind of white label solutions, I know you guys are using iControl for your back end, and what sort of drew you to iControl in terms of having somebody to kind of run that back end?
Yeah. So for us, it was really easy. What we were trying to solve for was the consumer, right? We started there to say, okay, look, the hardest part of all of this is technology is never easy. I don't mean to understate it, but it's really making this work for the human. And so, it's not about speeds and feeds and, Zigbee versus Z-Wave versus anything else for the average consumer. They don't even have visibility to any of that. And so for us, it didn't really seem to make a lot of sense to bring a whole new sort of platform to bear in the market, but rather to leverage the best of what's out there. And so, iControl's got, 1 million or more homes, connected on their platform. There's something like 22 or 23 million devices certified under Open Home. It's a platform that works. It's a platform that's scaled, and it's a platform that's got a, device certification process that, make sure these things work when it lands in a consumer's home. And so on top of, back end's probably a good way to put it. I mean, we kind of think of it as an engine. We've taken that engine and wrapped a car around it, right? So, from a branding and packaging and all that sort of perspective, but then also in terms of the way activation flows work. I mean, we are the only provider that uses iControl in a self-install model, right? So we've done a lot of work ensuring, smooth activation, again, without technical knowledge on the part of the consumer. And then, of course, device integration and certification is important, as is the UI. So the devices that you see offered under Peq branding are a subset, frankly, of the Open Home certified devices. But what we were trying to do is just deal with some of the fragmentation in the market and make it easy for the consumer to understand. So as they go through device activation flow, not only are they dealing with a set of certified devices that simply work, but then, we're providing very, very robust support on the end user activation of all of that.
Very cool. I think you covered all of the most important words I could have possibly heard anybody said about the product there. It works. is the most important one, and then the end user experience is very important, and then of course the support there at the end. All three of those pretty much nails what every product needs, and not all of them have. So I mean that we've covered a pretty good high level view. What's the unbox, or I guess let's talk about like what the unboxing and what specifically Peq is, and how I would get started with Peq. I guess what the unboxing experience and setup experience would be like.
Yeah, so let me walk you through the way we sort of present the product. So it starts with a starter kit, and the starter kit consists of a hub that's got a Wi-Fi radio in it and a Zigbee radio in it and a door and window sensor. So that retails for $119.99, so $120. And the thought process there is that rather than just selling a standalone hub that doesn't do anything on its own, that we'll sell something that's a basic use case. So that door and window sensor, can obviously create a number of different experiences for the consumer. It's 3:30 and the front door opened. Seems like Johnny's come home from school okay, right? So that's the sort of basic entry point at 120. Then beyond that, we've got obviously appliance modules, lamp modules, those sorts of things that are sort of for control. We've got a camera that can be added into the system to really do a couple things. One is we're very focused on contextual video. We don't think consumers really want closed circuit television for their home. What they want is video that is context sensitive, and is integrated into alerts or rules of various sorts. So again, using the kid coming off the school bus example, it's 3:30 and the front door open, must be Johnny coming home. And oh, by the way, here's a 15-second video clip of Johnny walking in the door. So what we've seen in terms of what consumers are interested in is, when you think cameras, you often think security. What we've really seen is something that looks a bit more like emotional security. It's more about sort of being home when you're not, engaging with the folks in the household in different ways, leveraging that platform. Of course, that has applications in the form of access control and so forth, right? Remotely unlock the front door when the plumber arrives and get a 15-second video clip showing the plumber walking in the door. So those sorts of things. But all of that is a lot more of what we've seen as opposed to, I want closed circuit television, or I want 5 cameras around the house to monitor everything that goes on 24 hours a day. We're focused on that contextual video. So the cameras at a $129 price point could be added into the system. Of course, we've got motion sensors, door and window sensors to just continue to add on. So motion would be a very logical trigger for a camera, for example. Motion in an away mode would be a very logical trigger for security style applications. Again, very focused on triggers and actions. So using motion to trigger an action of whatever sort, the lights coming on, those sorts of things. We've got a water sensor in the product array as well, and that's pretty common sense. It's amazing how many people have had significant water damage. I count myself as one of those. So I've got a pretty tricked out security system that, frankly, the only reason I have monitoring on it has been for water. And I had about $120,000 in water damage on a kitchen about 7 or 8 years ago.
Oof,
so,
ouch.
So for $170, $120 for a hub, and then $50 for a water sensor, you now have water monitoring. And so the default rule out of the box when you activate a water sensor is water sensor activates, you get a text. So we don't sort of mess around with a lot of the rules are there. They're very, very powerful, but even for the typical consumer that just has a very basic use case, right out of the box at pretty aggressive price points, you've got functionality. We've got a carbon monoxide detector as well, so for obvious reasons, another point of safety, and then HVAC. So we've got a Peq branded thermostat in the mix that again for sort of obvious application, both for energy management and comfort. And really what we see there is people really wanting to glue all these things together. So no doubt that there's some nice, internet connected thermostats that are out there, but unfortunately they don't talk to anything else, at least not as yet. And so, we see people creating things that in sort of traditional home automation parlance would be things like scenes, or various modes, and being able to control HVAC is an important part of that. So I think we've kind of covered the array of devices that are made available under Peq branding. But then we've got a layer on top of that are certified or whitelisted devices that could be sourced from third parties. So those would include things like GE Jasco wall switches. So we have a set of Zigbee certified wall switches that consumers can source and operate on our platform. And then there's a layer above that, which is third-party integration. So lots of discussion in the connected home space of late around cloud-to-cloud integrations or server-to-server integrations. And so we're working on a number of those, as you might expect, and expect to see some news in the coming weeks and months on that front as well. Our goal is to be the connected home service provider to the consumer. Hardware is a way to enable that. And again, our Peq branded hardware approach has really been driven in large part by making it easy for the consumer. But ultimately, as we see more and more branded devices coming into the market, we want to make sure we're certified and interoperable with the brands that make sense there as well.
Oh, no doubt. That it sounds like you have most of the bases covered there as far as sensors and devices go. I mean, that's what most people I think are looking for.
And I don't know that I mentioned door locks. So door locks are pretty new. Been out for just a few weeks now, but we're certified with both Yale and Kwikset for door locks. So access control is a pretty big deal, remotely managing your house. So we're pretty excited about that.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious who you think maybe your target customer is. We're here in Sarasota. We have kind of the retirement community as well as yeah, it's Florida, as well as the the millennials that are kind of coming in, and I find that the millennials will kind of drift towards this type of system, whereas the retirees will go towards a more complicated, not complicated, but more bespoke type Control 4, Crestron, those types of systems. Is that what you're finding as well?
Well, it's interesting because I think the initial target across a lot of, well, first off, if you have a smartphone and you have broadband, you're capable of installing the system and, adopting it and using it successfully. So that's not a target per se, but rather a set of enablers, right? And so at this point with significant broadband adoption and significant smartphone adoption, the range is pretty wide in terms of the audience that we think will be adopting these platforms over time. It's early days, no doubt that to date it's been sort of an enthusiast market, moving into mass market adoption as we speak. What we see is a lot of young families, so not necessarily millennials per se, but young technology astute families that rather than picking up a nanny cam style camera, realizes that there's value in having a bit more of a, extensible system. So we actually see that the birth of a child being a key trigger, and then in turn through various life stages, the nanny cam element is in fact there. That ultimately the kid getting off the school bus, the emotional security of that. So we definitely see sort of connected families as a significant target and an adopter to date. What's interesting when you look at the sort of older end of the spectrum, we're starting to see a dynamic where folks like me, I'm 43. My parents are aging in place, I guess is the way to put it. And the family is trying to do what we can to support from afar, and beginning to look at technology as a way to help make that happen. And so some of those things could be more security oriented. Actually, my parents had a water pipe freeze this past winter. Would have been great to have a water sensor there, carbon monoxide, all those sorts of things. And potentially the application of motion sensors and other things, just to see if the normal course of daily behavior is happening as it should, and if not, sending alerts. So it's interesting. It's we'll see where it all plays out. But I think there's applications of the technology really across a broad spectrum of audiences. The last point on this is we see a lot of pet owners. Pet owners is a really big deal because of the camera. In fact, when my brother installed his system a couple months back, his 12-year-old daughter got really excited because it's like, wow, I can, if I'm having a bad day at school, I can just pick up my iPhone and look in on Charlie. And so we've sort of learned to expect the unexpected in terms of the applications that people have had for the technology. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, you mentioned people shopping for the product based on having a baby, and that resonated with me. I'm actually getting ready to have my first baby. My wife is due November 11th, so about a month from today.
Congratulations!
As we record this, thank you very much. And
target customer right here.
Yeah,
yeah. Well, go visit mypeq.com.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's definitely. I think you're absolutely right. I've been looking at. We've been registering for all the baby stuff and going around and shopping, and we were at the store registering, and they showed us, this internet connected kind of camera, and it was like, I think $130 or something. And I was like, well, I'm not going to buy that because I can go out and get one of these, 3 or 4 different options on the market now of hubs that give you that camera, but kind of do a bunch of stuff in addition to that. So yeah, I do think that is a great market for you guys as well as, some of your competitors. One question I did have was about the monthly. I think there's a subscription fee associated with the product, a subscription charge that's monthly. Is that something that's mandatory kind of deal to use the system, or is this sort of a freemium model where that unlocks maybe some extra features?
No, so in our case, it's a $9.99 subscription for any application of the platform. So that could be a basic application all the way up to 5 cameras and 50 sensors. So it's a single $9.99 monthly subscription, regardless of how your system is configured. And there's a number of drivers for that. One is we know consumers are looking for a partner for the long haul. This space has been fragmented. I think some consumers, I think in some instances that have participated in this space has sort of hit a dead end with one or more what we would call point solutions. They're looking for an ecosystem. They're looking for a platform. They're frankly looking for somebody else to be the integrator, right? And that nobody wants to have to reboot their house. And so we've established ourselves as a service provider, albeit primarily a cloud service provider. So we're doing an awful lot of things on the back end in our infrastructure, and in turn also on the iControl platform to enable these experiences. And at the same time, also have a significant investment in a certification process, just making sure this stuff works. And so quite frankly, we don't believe a lot of the sort of free models that are out there today are sustainable for the long haul. That there's a significant level of investment required in any cloud infrastructure. Certainly in this space, there's a lot of device integration that has to happen as well. And so as we've embarked on mass market, we think, consumers see value there. So, a reasonable sort of proxy for it is if you look at the monitored security space at, $30 and $40 a month with contracts and so forth, as well as sometimes significant investment from an upfront, hardware perspective. So, we see ourselves as having, significant value if you were to compare to some of those offerings. And then certainly the offerings of the connected homes offerings of the cable companies and others.
Yeah, no, I think it makes perfect sense. And like I said, Seth and I are very familiar with the amount of service and kind of support that these sort of systems can require. So I definitely understand the argument for sustainability in your business model, and I think that you make a compelling case for it. The one question I did have that's just a quick one that I want to make sure we touch on. Is the app for Peq available on both iOS and Android? Or are you iOS only right now? What's the status on that?
So we are across all platforms. So, well, I shouldn't say all because then you'll ask me about Windows. But so we're both Android and iOS and have custom versions for phone versus tablet. Right? We want to make sure we take advantage of the additional real estate available on tablet. So yeah, you can go out there today in both Android or Google Play and Apple and download our current version of the app. Actually has a test drive function in it as well. So without investing in the hardware or the subscription, you can get a pretty good sense for what the platform does. Those are out there today. And then, of course, we've got a web version as well. As you might imagine, we see an awful lot of the interaction with the platform coming off of mobile beyond the setup, right? We see a lot of setup and rules creation happening on web. And then obviously a lot of the interaction with the platform happening on devices.
Very cool. Very cool. That makes a lot of sense. So I know you covered this just briefly, I think, when you were doing kind of the technical rundown of how things work. What type of radios does the system have? Is it like Z-Wave, Zigbee? What number of devices could possibly be connected to Peq here in the future?
Yeah, so the radios that we have in the hub are Wi-Fi for the camera, so it's for obvious reasons in terms of throughput, and then Zigbee. And so one of the things we've taken a lot of time and effort to think about is just how we make this simple, how we make this reliable. And they're not easy questions to always answer, but our thought process around the radios issue has been, the devices that we're looking for are very much available in the Zigbee ecosystem, and introducing complexity on the hub with an additional radio just doesn't make sense. It can create some signal propagation issues and conflict issues and all those sorts of things. It adds cost, it adds complexity, and ultimately, Zigbee offers everything that we're looking to do. Lots of discussions around other variants of Zigbee, lots of discussions around other variants of Wi-Fi, and certainly as and Bluetooth for that matter, and certainly as things evolve, we'll continue to look at how we play it from a technology perspective. But our goal is frankly to make this as simple and reliable as possible for the average consumer, and oftentimes that means keeping it simple from an architecture perspective as well, and that's what we've opted to do.
Sure. No. And I know you briefly touched on this too, but I wouldn't be an integrator if I didn't ask about, further integrations with the system for third party and, third parties all together. Are there any plans, or do you have an API of some type on the roadmap, or is that something you have ready today?
Well, so we have a couple of integrations that have been done and a bunch in the works. So the ones that are in the works, I'll, more to come in the next couple of weeks and months on that front. But the ones that have been completed, I think, are kind of interesting. The one we just recently completed was actually with Logitech. So on their Harmony remote line, they support Peq, essentially, a version of the Peq app. And so, actually, I've been a big fan of Harmony remotes for a long time, and they did a Nest integration a couple of months back, and that was interesting. But I'm a lot more interested in, enabling scenes through that remote, or, creating modes. Blu-ray mode, fires up the surround sound and, dims the lights and potentially changes the temperature as well. So that one just hit just a few weeks back. We've been on the Pebble Watch for some time now, and so those are ones where Peq has been sort of ported over to other devices, and then there are others, of course, where we're bringing third-party devices into our ecosystem. So we are sort of firmly aware that there are a number of interesting branded devices out there, whether they be light bulbs or thermostats or the like, and expect to be supporting them soon.
Very cool. Yeah, you mentioned Harmony there. We've been seeing quite a bit about them lately. They seem to kind of have their hands in the getting more invested in the home automation in general, which I think is exciting. Could make for a great partnership. But anyways, I think we've kind of covered Peq. I think it sounds like an exciting product, and we definitely appreciate having you on. We're kind of running up against our time here. So what's next for Smarthome Ventures? What are you guys getting excited about these days?
Well, as I said earlier, it's early days, right? So we just officially launched the product just a very short time ago. We've got lots of plans in our product roadmap. I guess I should say stay tuned, because both within the Peq product line as well as across other aspects of what Smarthome Ventures has been up to, there'll be news in the next couple of quarters. And we're having fun. We're excited about the space. I think there's a level of excitement across the industry that we really are at this point where connected home is a reality. We do, in fact, think that one of the hardest parts of it all is the human, and so we're going to continue to focus on making it easy, making a great UI and a great experience for the average consumer, and lots ahead.
Great. Yeah, we love to hear that. That's really our focus on Home Tech, is we try to really emphasize the end user experience, and kind of there's all this technology out there now, but it's really important to focus on why it matters, and why it matters is really the end user. So glad to hear you say that, and we really appreciate you again taking the time to come on the show and join us. If our audience wants to find out more about you, I know you've mentioned the website a couple times. If they wanted to maybe reach out to you with a couple of questions, what would be the best way for them to do that?
So our company website is smarthomeventures.com, and there's a contact form on there. And any folks with additional questions or interested in business development kind of discussions, happy to entertain those. So that's the corporate website, smarthomeventures.com, and then again the product website is mypeq.com, mypeq.com.
All right, awesome. Well, Ted, thank you again for taking the time to join us. We really appreciate it, and we will let you go.
My pleasure.
All right,
Good
take
afternoon.
care.
Thanks, Ted.